Okay, great. My name is John Threlfall, and I'm the Communications and Special Projects Officer for UVic's Faculty of Fine Arts. I'm happy to be moderating this conversation with Caroline Riedel and guests Caitlin Gallupe and Trevor Rutherford. Today, we're going to be talking about finding meaningful work in the arts and how UVic's Co-op and Careers can help, whether you're a student or an alumni. I think a lot of people aren't aware that even if you're an alumni, you can come back and use the services of Co-op and Careers. Before we begin, however, I'd like to acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional territory the University of Victoria stands, and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanich peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. That historical relationship is an important thing to keep in mind at all times, given that a sense of place, history, and personal experience informs so much of our lives and our creative practices in the fine arts. Every day, I feel fortunate to be able to live, work, learn, play, create, do ritual, and raise my family here. So I'm pleased today to introduce our guests. Caroline Riedel is, in addition to being a career educator with UVic's Co-op and Careers Office, Caroline is also a fine arts alumni and has been the longstanding curator of collections for UVic's Legacy Art Gallery. Caitlin Gallupe is an artist, musician, and a UVic Visual Arts and Film Studies alumni. And Trevor Rutherford is a current music and computer science student in UVic School of Music. So thanks everyone to attending today, and thanks to our guests who are watching as well. Caroline, we're going to start with you. Is it possible for fine art students and alumni to find meaningful work in the arts?
Yeah, thanks, John. Yes, of course it is possible. And I'm going to talk about some of the ways you can go about finding that meaningful work in your field. I'm going to share my screen and just do a brief presentation, but yeah, just, feel free to jump in, John, Caitlin, Trevor, if there's things you want to add to the points I'm making. Just let me get set up here. Okay. So just bear with me here. I've got too many screens on the go here. Yeah, so first off, I wanted to just kind of give an outline of the types of services that we provide and how we go about coaching students and alumni. I want to underline that fact that we serve alumni as well. So what we do when we coach students to build a meaningful career, and in this case, in the arts. So first of all, this is the framework that we use in Co-op and Career Services. It's called the Leading Edge Framework, and it is based on 4 questions. And these questions are: what do you love? What are you great at? What does the world need? And what can you be paid for? And so these 4 questions really are going to help you, if you're at really early stages, kind of help you kind of understand yourself, but also what kind of job market you're stepping into. Yeah, and so we are kind of trained and help you go through different levels of self-exploration and then research in the field as well. So as part of this, I want to share my very, very, very favorite career theory. So career educators, part of our training is being aware of different career theories. And this one is called Crumbled's theory of planned happenstance. And I love this one because it allows for flexibility in your job search. It allows for flexibility kind of in what you're exploring. And the idea is that unplanned events can lead to positive and unexpected outcomes. So, not everybody loves this sort of free-flowing approach, but in fact, this theory is grounded in our current job market, which is undergoing change and flux. It allows people to kind of roll with unexpected change, but from an optimistic growth mindset. And I also use this approach to help people plan for what they aspire to. So you might have a certain career in mind, and you might start looking at sample job postings and see what kinds of qualifications are typical for that career area. So as you start, most likely in an entry-level role, at the same time, you can start to build up qualifications that you might be lacking, maybe by volunteering, maybe acquiring some additional micro credentials. Yeah, just sort of starting to build alongside the paid work that you might already be doing. So just building on that, you know, we all know the word networking, and I think a lot of folks have that image of, you know, if you're doing an MBA and you're going to one of these like networking mixers where you put on your suit and you have a pitch and you connect. But that's not what I mean. And that's not typically what we coach students for, particularly in my role. For me, when I talk about networking, it's actually just talking to people. And that can be really informal. I mean, it can be someone that you're sitting next to at a baseball game, or maybe you're sitting next to as you're traveling in an airplane, and you're just like, yeah, connecting and like, so what do you do? And what's, you know, any industry insights? What do you like about your job? Yeah, so just casting a wide net and talking to people, because you might have kind of an imagined idea of what a job actually, or what a job is, and then it's very different from what it actually is in real life.
You know, I can't stress enough the idea of networking. And I always say it's the informal power of chit chat. Because if you're just chatting with people, like grocery lineups, wherever you may be, you never know who you're going to make a connection with. So yeah, I'm all about networking.
Yeah, and you know, I always put a disclaimer on networking because so many people think, oh, it's like transactional. Do I have it's not like, it can just be genuine interest. It's not that you're going to hand them your resume and say, you know, give me a job, but it's information gathering, and it's just practicing creating positive relationships. And yeah. The other thing I talk to people about is maybe finding a mentor over time, or maybe there's an emerging professional group that you can join. Lots of folks, you know, there used to be an emerging museum professionals group. I don't know if it still exists, but they would invite lots of guest speakers and share information. Volunteering, also a really great way just to make connections with people in your field. So for example, you know, there's lots of festivals planned for the summer. So you might do some short-term volunteering just to get both practical experience, but just meet people in some of the organizations that you're interested in. Board membership is another way. There are some postgraduate internships. The ones that I know best are in the museum field. So Young Canada Works offers a 6-month internship to recent graduates. The BC Arts Council also has different kind of emerging professional internship support. And then joining a professional association is another good one, just because you can attend conferences, again, meet people, and just sort of be up on kind of industry news. So you'll get newsletters. There might even be mentorship opportunities within that association. So that's another good strategy.
Oh, those are great. I think volunteering often gets a bad rap because people think, oh, volunteering is unpaid work. Well, you can be paid for work that you're doing, but then you can also be volunteering on the side as well. I've been an active volunteer in many organizations for like 30 years now, and it's super. You know?
Yeah, agreed. And then some people think, well, you know, am I going to get like quality experience, or is it just busy work? But I think, yeah, as you kind of stick with an organization or stick with a particular, type of work, type of volunteer opportunity, you'll get more and more responsibilities as time goes on as well.
So this slide really surprises me.
Tell me more.
I would think job postings, like that's where most job seekers start looking for work. Yes, but employers are starting to look to hire at the complete opposite end. This surprises me. So what's this one all about?
Yeah, so this pyramid, this actually comes from, I took it off the Carleton Career Services page, but it came from actually Alberta's like provincial job search site. So what this actually is meant to illustrate is that job postings are not always the most effective way to get hired for a position. So when you're putting in a job application, you know, you're coming in cold. the employers don't know you, so they're relying on how you're presenting yourself on paper or in the in the digital portal. Whereas, as we've been just talking about already, that internal candidates, referrals, volunteering, having a previous contract, that's plays a massive role in people's impression of you. People will ask coworkers, do you know of this person, particularly in a small town like Victoria? People know each other and kind of trust each other in terms of like recommendations for possible hires. Any other thoughts there, John? Was that the big surprise about job postings?
It was, yeah. Because I think when people look for jobs, they look for job postings. They don't actually think about it, the different ways you can go in the doors.
For sure. Yeah.
Everywhere I've worked, it's always been, oh, I volunteered here, or I was a co-op student or a work study student, and it's a good way also to know if you like the environment. So if you do come in cold to a job, if you do get lucky and you there's a job posting and you get hired, you might not actually enjoy the environment there. So if you have volunteered there before, you can figure out if you're a good fit.
That's that's good insight, because quite often a job is a job, but every job has an environment, and the workplace environment is so important as well. So it's a good way of knowing if you're going to enjoy working with the people on an everyday basis. Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, so here's the other thing I want to share with you. One thing is, so best job boards. Lots of folks ask me that, particularly for the arts. It's like, how do I sift through, big sites like Indeed.com and find arts-related jobs? Yeah, and as time goes on, I've been in this role now for 4 or 5 months, so not very long, but I've, started to gather more and more knowledge about specific arts-related sites. So for example, like the BC Alliance for Arts and Culture has a ton of job postings, calls for artists, residency opportunities. So this was a fairly new discovery for me, and it was really great to have it more consolidated on this one site. Creative BC has information about funding for arts projects. Then there's Creative Pathways, which is specific to the BC film industry. And then there's ones like Charity Village, which is primarily nonprofit and NGOs. Municipal jobs you can find on Civic Info BC. And that's for things, that includes things like summer camp employees. So for folks who like working with kids and, maybe like art as well, like these are great entry-level opportunities to, to sort of bring together your interest in art.
Municipal jobs, I think a lot of people, again, they think about municipal jobs as being fairly bureaucratic, but almost every municipality has an arts division of some kind. And it's surprising the kind of positions you can get there. I know people who work in arts administrative positions who are musicians, who are visual artists, who are writers, and at least they have a day job in the arts that allows them to be creative on the side as well.
Absolutely. And then I will also say, like, there are artists in residence for the city of Victoria, for example.
Yeah.
Or poets. There's like a young poet laureate every year.
Yeah.
So lots of really interesting opportunities.
Here's another hot tip that I use and I tell people about a lot. If you're interested in something like, say, working in theater in Victoria, you should be on the email list for every theater company in Victoria. You should get their e-news. You should follow them on Twitter, on Instagram. You should follow these people that you're interested in working with, because quite often they do post. Theater Scam recently posted for 20 positions, and that came through my e-news of what was going on with Scam. So if you're interested in these fields and you're not following the people who are leaders in those fields, by all means do that.
Yeah, for sure. John, I'm also going to ask you to comment on UVic Careers. You mentioned that there's been some recent hires. Do you want to say a few things about UVic's page?
I think people forget that UVic as an employer I think UVic employs about 5,000 people on campus. And some of those, you know, a lot of those are faculty teaching positions, yes, but a lot of them are also staff positions. And there's a lot of young alumni who get hired straight into UVic staff positions, maybe working for alumni relations, maybe being a communications officer like myself. I know communication officers across campus working for different units who are under 30. And, you know, they're just getting started in their career, but they have a knowledge base of the campus environment, of UVic as a whole, which is really invaluable. So you might graduate thinking, okay, now I'm ready to leave and get a job somewhere else. But there might also be a job here on campus that is of interest as well. So I'd always encourage people to look at the UVic career page too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, having been situated on the UVic campus and just really knowing the culture, knowing where everything is, all of that, yeah, is a great launching point for jobs on campus.
And that applies for every university as well, community college, university. If you've been spending a number of years, as we all do, if you spend a number of years in an academic environment, you are ideally placed to work in an academic environment. So maybe you choose to go somewhere else in Canada. Maybe you go north. Maybe you go someplace where the job market is not as tough as Victoria or Vancouver, although the job market is quite open right now too.
I'll say, I know that UVic, the School of Music, just hired a master's student as a kind of audio tech person for the building. So, yeah.
And Trevor, that's your field as well, as music computer science. That would be the kind of thing you'd be interested in too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, another interesting one that I saw somewhat recently was like a props builder or costume, you know, the person who's in charge of costumes for the theater department. Like all of those sound really interesting and exciting. Like just the depth of types of jobs that are available on campus is pretty remarkable. Okay, I'm going to move along here. So I also wanted to just point out some of the really good sites for labor market info, because, you know, lots of folks who are, you know, who've got sort of that first Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, kind of wonder like, okay, how do I now make the transition to some of the more like specialized roles? So for example, like maybe you're interested in communications, maybe you're interested in graphic design. Likely you'll need to do a little bit more, you know, some additional training, but also you'll probably want to know like what's the demand for this type of role. So I want to just quickly point out Work BC as a really excellent source. And if you want to look Canada-wide, the Government of Canada has a site called Job Bank, where they've got pretty detailed trend analysis from across Canada. So let me just, I'm hoping that this is going to show up. And if not, I'll go to the site itself. How is this for size? Can you read this or should I?
No, I can read it.
To the link. Okay.
I've got not great eyes, so I can read it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. So that's good. Oops. And now I've just lost my connection because I moved my laptop. Hang on one sec here.
I'll take that little space to remind people in the audience, if you've got questions for us, just type them into the Q&A function, and we're happy to answer your questions as well. And Caroline looks like she's having a bit of technical difficulties, but she'll be back very shortly. There you go. Okay.
Okay, here I am. Sorry about that. Yeah, I have a very finicky. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, now you're jumping around.
Oh my gosh, my apologies. Okay, I keep getting a Zoom has quit message, but I think I'm still here.
Yeah, we can.
All right, okay, moving on. So this is an example of Work BC's site. So for example, if you look up something like graphic design, you'll see up here, high opportunity position. So I like seeing that because that basically what they mean there is if you go through the training, it is very likely you're going to get a job in this field. Yeah, and then some there's some very detailed things that they've kind of detailed tabs in here. So you can learn about the job. There's videos, interviews with people in the field, so you can see what the work environment looks like. You can get an idea of what a typical, what a typical day is like. Insider tips about what the industry is, what direction the industry is headed in. And then also over here on the right, recent posts. So you can look at actual jobs that are out there. And just see what kind of qualifications are needed. What's the typical salary?
Right. So do we, in Work BC, we go up to the search bar and you would type in whatever field you're interested in, music, technology, art, something like that?
Well, sometimes it's a little bit more finicky than that. So see, this NOC is National Occupation Code.
Oh, yes.
So it's kind of grouped in like discipline or like area specific, and then they have these numbers.
Okay.
The actual tab that it's under, so if you go Work BC and you see the tab here that says Job and Careers, and if you go to the drop down there, you can, there's another section that says Explore Careers.
Oh, okay.
And then it'll take you to, you can either search or you can browse. And it kind of guides you through different search criteria.
Great.
Yeah. And then over here, I wanted to show you this one as well. It's not always intuitive, but like here, for example, this is like a little bit more upper level. So managers in publishing, motion pictures, broadcasting, and performing arts. So yeah, it's a little bit finicky in terms of how to find the information, but once you do, they kind of group together different sort of related areas. Right. And then when you scroll down on the page, this is the part that I really like, is things like kind of medians, or like median and high and low salary. What does the actual labor market look like? So projections for the next 10 years, is there going to be growth? Are there going to be new job openings, or is it due to people retiring? And then there's another section where you can look at projected job openings by region. So typically the Lower Mainland is the one that's going to have most jobs. But Vancouver Island, still pretty steady.
I don't know if we're seeing that slide, Caroline.
Oh, interesting.
We're still on the graphic designer and illustrator slide.
Oh, how weird. Okay, because on my, I'm going to just share again. Yeah, because on my screen, I'm scrolling along nicely. Sorry about that.
There we go. So now,
so this is that page with, salaries, labor market outlook,
great,
job openings, and then region.
Interesting.
All right, and this is my final slide. So just kind of a summary of what we offer at Career Services. So again, I really want to stress that we don't just serve students, we also serve alumni. And you can do that. You can connect with us in a number of ways. Booked appointments. You can do that through the Learning in Motion portal. So alumni can use their UVic link ID. Or if you have trouble with that, you can just email us directly. It's careers@uvic.ca, and we'll make an appointment for you. So you can see the types of things that we provide coaching on. So career exploration, resumes, cover letters. We can do interview prep, mock interviews, help you search for work, applications to grad school. And then another format that we offer is drop-in. So there can be more spontaneous drop-in appointments, Monday afternoons, Wednesday mornings, either on Zoom or in person. And then we have scheduled workshops. So usually that's once a month on interviews, resumes, and then LinkedIn. So how to use social media, and LinkedIn specifically for job search, networking, and just creating a profile and getting yourself out there kind of in a digital format.
I think LinkedIn is one of those hidden tools that a lot of people don't think about, or they think about they don't have enough experience to go on LinkedIn yet, but it really is a fantastic networking tool.
Yeah, agreed. It takes time to kind of build it up. There's sort of stages to to kind of leveraging its effectiveness. And Richard Myers is my coworker. He teaches LinkedIn, and it's really interesting. Different levels that you can use it on.
Great.
Okay, and here's the visual. Here's where we're located. We're adjacent to the bookstore. Our entrance isn't quite photogenic enough to have made it on the image itself, but yeah, right next to the bookstore, facing the bus loop there.
Great. Okay, that was some really good practical information about where to look for jobs, job boards, things like that. Caitlin, let's go to you and Trevor. Start with you, Caitlin. So can you tell us what kind of services you've had with careers and co-ops? Like how have you used them to benefit your search?
Yeah, so I had a work study position. I went back to school to upgrade in order to apply for a grad program in art conservation. And so I got this work study position at the Legacy Galleries. And there I got a lot of experience that would have been really hard to get otherwise. It would have been hard to get even as a volunteer. So, so that was really valuable to me. And then I also accessed career services in order to prep for my interview for grad school. And that was very helpful because I'm a bit of a shy person, and interviews overwhelm me. And there was a lot of really practical advice that I got through Caroline, just how to make myself more comfortable, what kind of questions to expect, and that helped me a lot. And I got in, so.
Excellent. So it worked.
Success, yeah.
And Trevor, you've done a couple of co-op terms?
I have, yes. Yeah, were you just curious about those?
Yeah. Well, let's start with that. Like, tell me what kind of co-op terms you've done and how many, and what kind of things you've been doing.
Sure. My first co-op term was for UVic's engineering IT staff, and it was, I think we lost Caroline.
She'll probably come back in. She's
Okay.
having trouble with her connection.
Anyways, yeah, UVic's IT department for the engineering. They were hiring web developers to make these. They have like a whole rack of computer monitors that sit in the server room, and they wanted to have kind of like displays for like who's logged in on what computers, how much ink is left in the printers, like what different servers are doing all around the building. So they needed a web developer to kind of do that. And I learned like more in those 2 months than I had learned in like 3 years of school before that. It was like really, really good kind of like fast-paced experience with programming. And then from there, I went on to work for PG Music, which is a local music software company.
Yeah. They do Band in a Box, don't they? Isn't that them?
Yeah, they do Band in a Box. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it generates backing tracks basically for musicians to kind of solo over or practice or whatever. That was fun. Did 2 co-op terms with them, and then worked for a startup called Sonically, which makes educational music production games that teach people like how to do mixing and stuff for pop music.
Great. So do you, I mean, you're still enrolled in school. How much more do you have left in your studies?
This is it. I'm coming to the end. I graduate in June.
Okay. So do you feel like you've made some connections there through those positions that might help you in a job search?
Yes, I think that the references and just the bullet points on the resume are really good from co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then through like my meetings with Caroline as well, have like got me a lot more connections in kind of the niche that I'm going into now, which is sound and music for indie video games.
Oh. So is that being done locally, or do you have to go out of town for that one?
I'm going to Vancouver in a month, yeah. But some of the connections have been local, some of them have been, like Caroline showed me how to use LinkedIn to kind of like scan through UVic alumni that have done a similar education as me.
Right.
And through that, I found like a company in Vancouver that hires sound designers and stuff, reached out to that guy. I haven't met with him yet, but we've got a meeting set up for next Friday. So lots of, it was really helpful for that kind of thing, for like informational interviews and stuff like that with people in the industry.
That's excellent. I'm all about the informational interview. So Caroline, let me throw this one to you. So the idea of the informational interview, like also just called coffee chats, they're sort of informal mentoring where you talk to people in the industry who are in a field that you're interested in, and you're not asking them for a job, but you're just, you're just sort of having a talk with them about what they do and what the field is like. Am I correct in that?
That's exactly it. Yeah, like some folks think that, they're supposed to be set up to be, hand them the resume at the end of the chat. But it's, again, just about making some initial connections, and maybe they have suggestions of who else you can talk to, or maybe the person you're talking to knows of some job posts that are related. So yeah, I can't stress enough kind of that informalness of it. Of course, make a good impression.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, but don't put the pressure on yourself that, this is my one chance, my one shot, and I'm gonna, ask for a job at the end of this conversation.
Yeah. And I find, generally speaking, that people are very happy to do those. Like, you might think that everyone's very busy. They don't have time to talk to somebody who's just entering the field. But in fact, I've found over the years, it's just the opposite. People who are in fields are more than happy to share their experiences and their insights with people who are entering the workforce. There's no question there, but
Yeah, I
just
agree.
everyone
had to do it at some point, and they can probably point to the few people who helped them or gave them contacts, or so everyone seems to be really helpful. Yeah.
Caitlin, you had mentioned earlier you're going to art conservation into that field. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how does the future for you look in that field?
Well, I'm not totally sure yet, but I chose that after a sort of, decade or two of trying to figure out that sort of quadrant that Caroline was talking about, what do I love, what am I great at, what the world needs, what I can be paid for. And of course, with art, you often have the what am I good at, what do I like, but not the what can I be paid for element. And so I knew that I wanted to work with my hands and work with art, and I knew I wanted to have limited time on a computer. And so I was looking at, and while traveling to the Middle East, I saw that all of these people were restoring murals, and I said, oh, that's kind of a thing I want to do. And so I basically just started emailing willy-nilly, just people being like, how do I get into this field, or like, what are the qualifications, and just doing some research and finding out that it's something that I definitely wanted to pursue. And so it's pretty competitive grad program. It requires some pre-program experience and upgraded chemistry and all of this. And so, yeah, I was really happy to get that experience at Legacy with the art collection. And that was through your UVic, because it's a UVic's art collection there.
All right. You say willy-nilly, but to me that sounds like jobs. No, seriously, like that sounds like job search to me, like where you're contacting people and saying, what's the best path to go for this. I like that chart that you showed earlier, Caroline, the what do you love, what are you great at, what does the world need, and what can you be paid for? Like those are 4 really essential questions. Just to pull one thing from my background, what do you love and what are you great at? So I've always, even though I've never worked in the music field, I've always loved music, and I'm really good at putting together mixtapes. Like since I was in high school, I've always made mixtapes. And I had a job for probably about 4 years where I was a mobile DJ. I went around to weddings and parties and anniversaries and all kinds of stuff. And I was the guy in the microphone playing Beat It, by Michael Jackson. Let's all get out on the dance floor. And it was really silly, but it was a great job, because it paid well. I got good tips, and it was, it's in the arts realm, but it also used skills that I had that I never thought I could get paid for. Like, who thinks you could get paid for knowing how to play songs back to back, and what's a good song to follow this song and that song, and not being shy, being able to talk in front of a group of people. It was one of the most fun jobs I've ever had that I was never trained for, and it was just a random fluke, So I think people need to think about that more, about what do you love and what are you great at, and how do you make that work?
Also, if I could just add to that, like just generally like the career help providing a kind of like structure like that. Like I was just thinking a lot of your slides, Carolyn, were like, you know, basically that it's models and things that kind of like put structure onto an industry. Like, you know, arts is unstructured. Like there's no I start at the company at the, you know, working, you know, whatever entry level position and then work your way up the company. It's more like, whoa, like there's all these opportunities. I might be doing a contract here and a contract there or whatever. And it's like, it was nice for me working with career help to have like, you know, okay, I got a meeting coming up with career help. Before then, I want to kind of make this spreadsheet of contacts and have like, you know, I'm going to meet with this person and meet these goals. And that's going to help me, you know, that kind of thing.
Excellent. Yeah. So here's a general question. We can all answer it. So let's say I'm a student who's enrolled. I'm watching this right now. I'm a student. I'm still enrolled. What should I be doing to potentially look for meaningful work after graduation? What should I be doing now as a student? Caroline, let's start with you.
Sure. Lots of different ideas come to mind. Work study is probably one of my favorites because you can get really interesting positions on campus. It's pretty flexible. It's part-time work. So that's one opportunity, and it's, you know, you don't have to commute far. It's right here. Volunteering if you have the time, and you know, everyone has to make money too, so that doesn't always fit, but yeah, if you can, fantastic. And then look at some of the things, like for example, the Office of Student Life has some really interesting student-led programs. Things like there was one for, it's called Engaged Leaders, and it was people who were trained, so it's like upper level students who were trained to welcome and connect with newcomers. Primarily, you know, not just people from international pathways, but you know, helping people get settled and connected on campus. And people got experience with workshops, organizing events. Yeah, so I mean, there's lots out there, but the volunteering and work study are probably my top tips for current students.
Nice. And even that, like you might be doing a job for, you know, that specific office, but the skills you're acquiring while you're doing that, you're acquiring communication skills, you're acquiring organizational skills, like you're acquiring a lot of skills that can be transferred into any job situation. So it's not ever about what you're doing. It's about what you're learning and what you're acquiring while you're doing that as well.
Yeah, we talk about stepping stone experiences. So, you know, it may not be your end goal, but, you know, having an opportunity to organize an event on campus kind of builds you and sets you up for doing that in a professional role down the road.
Sure. Yeah. Trevor, you're still a student. Would you say signing up for co-op was the one thing that you've done that would be useful?
Yeah, that was really, really helpful. Yeah, I can't imagine graduating without having like any perspective on like what jobs are like in specifically for me, it was programming and kind of realizing that I don't really want to work in a workplace with really tight deadlines where I'm doing something like programming that kind of like, if things break, it's like, you know, you're the one who's responsible for fixing them. And sometimes there's no easy fix. And yeah, so I'm really glad I got that experience. And now I know that about myself, that's just something I'm going to avoid kind of in the future.
Yeah. Caroline, I know co-op, you function as humanities and fine arts co-op. They share a co-op officer. I think on average, doesn't fine arts do about 50 to 60 co-op positions a year?
Yep, that sounds about right. Yeah. 50 to 60.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, one of the things I wanted to mention, lots of folks think, oh, if I missed that second year deadline, like typically people apply in second year and they do 2 or 3 work terms over the course of their studies. But if you don't get in at that point, you can also tack on even a single work term at the end of your studies. That's another option. So I just wanted to mention that.
Sure, that seems almost ideal because then you're actually in the working environment and you don't have to focus on your studies as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Caitlin, was there one thing you did as a student that you found beneficial?
Definitely the work study.
Okay.
I kind of wish I'd done co-op. I didn't really know about it back then. I think just, yeah, going outside of the university and volunteering with any groups that you sort of align yourself with. There are so many different arts organizations in Victoria that need volunteers, and they also need board members. I'm on 2 boards right now and that desperately want members. They're just small sort of grassroots organizations. And that is good experience. It looks good on your resume or applications, and you meet a lot of people who are organizing and working in the field that you like too.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to say what, I'm just curious. I also on 2 boards as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious what the organizations are for you.
One is called Supply Creative Reuse Center.
Sure,
And
yeah.
So they are a nonprofit that distributes art supplies and has workshops and stuff for many different communities. And one is Girls Rock Camp, which is a music day camp. It's summer day camp for girls age 8 to 18. Yeah.
Fantastic. See, those are both great groups, and they're both arts related as well.
Yeah.
You know, so, and you think about the connections you make. Like, I know Supply, there's lots of artists who connect with them as well. You know, opportunities to lead workshop and to connect with people on the civic level too. And the Girls Rock Camp, that's just empowering. Like, I think that's just fantastic. Yeah.
Well, and Victoria is like so interconnected and tight knit in all the communities. So once you start talking to people about what you want to be doing, like, so many people will help you with opportunities and contacts and everything too. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Trevor, did you have a moment, like, outside of co-op in your studies, did you have a moment where there's that sort of informal aha moment where somebody said something to you and you're like, oh, I can see where that goes? You know, I guess what I'm looking for is something about the like I said before, the positive power of chit chat.
That's a good question. I mean, I recently spoke to a guy that I used to work for. I did a contract for Miniature World.
Right.
And
Miniature World, downtown.
Yeah, downtown. And he was, at the time, he was the tech guy. He fixed things.
Yeah.
And now he's actually the manager of Miniature World. So that was in the last like 3 years. At some point, I didn't speak to him in that time. But yeah, I went and talked to him, and he kind of, like, I've found it's kind of hard to gather information on something like video game music, which is, you know, what I'm really passionate about. And because it kind of, like, everybody who's working in that field, they're all just, they have their contacts, and there's no, like, I don't know, there's no way to see the network of people. There's no, like, companies like that necessarily. Like, and so when I spoke to him, like, he started listing all these names. He was like, oh, I know this guy and that guy. Oh, he did a contract for EA. You know, he works with, like, this studio in Vancouver or whatever. And it was kind of like, whoa, okay, there's all these people that do this. Like, I'm not crazy. Like, you know, there are opportunities there. It's just, they're not, like, jumping out unless you go and speak to the people who do it.
Right. Yeah.
So let's look ahead. So obviously for the last 2 years, we've had the pandemic, which has really hit the arts community very hard. Like, we saw venues and festivals and organizations shutting down across the board, and it was quite a dire time to find work in the arts. But now the restrictions are lifting, and I've been seeing a lot of postings lately for jobs in the arts. Whether those are technicians, whether it's people coming up on the festival season, arts administrators, I'm seeing a lot more positions opening up once again. The arts historically in Canada, whether people realize it or not, are one of the biggest employers in Canada, and far outstrip the sports industry in Canada in terms of employment and GDP contributions as well. But there's this prevailing myth that you can't find work in the arts. Are people feeling hopeful looking forward now that restrictions are lifting? Caroline, what do you think?
Well, I feel super hopeful and excited. If you go on just about any arts organization locally, there's, 3, 4, 5 jobs posted on just about anything. I went on the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria's sites. They've got some summer positions, but they've also got, professional roles. They're looking for an Indigenous curator. They're looking for a curator of Canadian art. Royal BC Museum, even though they're closing the whole third floor, they need a ton of folks to just help pack up all the stuff. So there's, again, sort of more technicians, collections type jobs. The BC Arts Council has just released a whole bunch of funds for, they're calling it a recovery fund. It's like a, getting back up to speed, like after the pandemic. So there's actually financial support coming from provincial sources for arts organizations.
Excellent.
To get back after COVID. So I'm feeling super optimistic from what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm.
Great. And I think the other thing, like we saw a lot of people in the restaurant industry pivoted to a different career options. I've got a friend, she's been literally a server for 30 years. And now she pivoted and she put her art education to use, and she's working for a costume company in Vancouver that works with the film industry. So she's come out of the restaurant industry and fully into an arts job, which I think is really quite encouraging as well. But similarly, like with people over the last couple of years dropping out, maybe finding different career paths, that means that there's more opening up, I think. There's similarly with just thinking about music tech, Trevor, I saw that the Lake Town Festival out in Lake Cowichan is actually running a training camp to develop a body of people who will be able to work on their festival this summer, which I just thought was a great opportunity. And one of the film unions next week, I believe, is putting on a showcase about how you can work in all the different areas this union reps, which is everything from hair and makeup and costume design to sound and scenic painting and all sorts of things. So I think now's the time to be gathering information, that's for sure. Somebody had mentioned earlier the idea of having a group of people that support each other, like, I don't know if that was Caitlin, if that was you, or if it was you, Caroline, people who are in a certain field and then getting a speaker to come in. What about the idea of joining people together and creating a working group, a support group yourselves? You think about writers groups who get together and they support each other's writings. But what if you're a bunch of people in the theater scene who are leaving school and they want to support each other and they form a group who then they can invite people in to speak to? Do you think that's a good path going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I think it's great to do that while you're still at university, where you have a cohort, and get that word out and gather your people. Yeah, I think that could be really, really, really helpful. And maybe less intimidating than, reaching out and doing some of these cold call kind of informational interviews. Some people may feel more comfortable approaching it from within a group situation. So yeah, I think that's really great.
Great. Caitlin, are you part of a group of artists that are sort of self-supporting artists?
Not formally, no. But it did remind me of something you said earlier, just about getting on like email listservs and stuff. And no one wants a ton more emails, but it has helped me a lot, actually, just like feel connected to different groups and just know what's going on. It actually has connected me to different AGMs I've participated with online, and then that sort of gets me off in some other direction. But yeah, I think that's a helpful tip, to just get on the email listservs.
Well, and mentioning online, we're in the golden era of the Zoom webinar as we're doing today. You're able to attend so much more now via Zoom, via webinars, than you ever could before. And it opens up all sorts of opportunities for you that before you would have to fly to New York or fly to Chicago or fly to Toronto. But now you can just find out that something is happening and you can just log in.
Totally.
That's great. Trevor, is there a network of music technicians around you that you share information with?
Yes, there is the Computer Music Course Union, which everybody should join if they're interested in computer science and music, kind of the intersection of that. So I got involved with that this last September. The previous president graduated, so 4 of us kind of stepped up to be like executives for that. And just what you were just saying really spoke to that. We were doing things like purchasing equipment for the studio in the School of Music. And one of the things that we were going to do was repair this bass amp that was just, we kind of found it sitting around, and the staff said like, yeah, you can take this, like it's broken. And so I ended up taking it to a guy in town who repairs bass amps from out of his his home repair shop. And I ended up speaking to him. And because of the connection with this kind of course union, we started talking about that, and he was like, oh, like, if you ever want someone to come in and like speak about like amplifiers and guitar pedals and things like that, like, if people are interested in circuitry or, the actual like nuts and bolts of how those audio effects work, like I can come in and speak. And like, it ended up, we didn't get time to do that in the end, but just the fact that that was a thing, there's like a group, you invite someone in and they speak, and then everybody makes a connection.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think more of those proactive things, instead of waiting for someone to hand you something. I think it's important to be able to go out and really develop connections yourself. One of the best pieces of advice anyone ever gave me was, if you knock on a door, you have to be prepared to walk open. You have to be able to, if you knock on a door, you have to be able to walk through it if it opens for you. And all that means is you have to have the confidence to knock on a door and then be prepared enough to go in if somebody says, yeah, sure, come on in and talk. And I think that's a good takeaway for people. I didn't say it that eloquently, but it's a good idea all the way around. With that in mind, we're just coming up at the end of our time though. Everyone just think about this for a minute while I'm yakking. So if you had one piece of advice to share for students or recent alumni who might be watching this right now as a takeaway for this session, what would that be? So mine would be just exactly that, like the idea of being confident and as prepared as possible to walk through a door if it opens for you. For example, I applied for a job at a newspaper once. It was a part-time job entering like the weekly calendar listings, what's coming up in music, what's coming up in this. But I went to that job interview with my writing portfolio with a whole bunch of samples of freelance pieces that I'd written, even though it had nothing to do with the job. And when I was in the interview with the editor, he said, well, do you have any writing experience? And I handed him my portfolio. And I said, well, sure. Like, here's a bunch of my freelance stuff that I've done. And he was really impressed with that. So not only did I get the job, but then when it came time that they needed extra writing done on the paper, he approached me and he said, well, I know you've got freelancing experience. Would you want to take this on? Anyways, fast forward 12 years later, I was the editor-in-chief of that newspaper, and I was in a position to then hire young people and encourage them to come along and grow as journalists themselves. So, Caroline, what about you? You got one piece of advice, one tip for people?
I think just be be courageous is what I wanted to say. Yeah, courageous, engaged, and just curious. I think, yeah, it can be easy for folks in the arts to kind of go insular and work on your own, but yeah, meeting folks, talking to folks is probably key. And then the planned happenstance thing, I'm a big fan of that, just being open to opportunities as they come along and just strategizing a little bit, but also, yeah, being open to chance.
Excellent, great. Caitlin, how about you?
Yeah, those are great ideas. I guess use the resources that are there, like career services. Like people have full-time jobs, they're paid to help you along, so use them. and tell people what you're interested in, what you're planning to do, because people are helpful and people will help you in your path, basically, and get connected with the communities and organizations that are aligned with what you want to do too, because even if it doesn't result in any professional thing, then you will be doing what you like and you will be meeting friends.
That's such a simple thing to say, tell people what you want to be doing. And yet it's so insightful, because if people don't know what you want to be doing, then how are they going to know to help you make connections? But if you say to somebody, I'd really like to get into this field, and they'll say, oh, well, have you talked to this person? And then boom, right away, you've got a connection that you might not have had. That's great. Oh, I like that one a lot. Trevor, how about you? Piece of advice?
Yeah, I have so this is advice that like my dad gave me in high school. I really like. I think it originally came from the astronaut guy from Canada. I can't remember his name, but
Hadfield.
Chris Hadfield?
yeah. So the advice is, if you're like, if all the different options for careers or whatever are on like a 360-degree like compass or whatever, and you aren't 100% sure of like what it is that you want to end up doing, as long as you're moving within the 180 degrees of what you think you might want to end up doing, you are moving towards it in some way.
Excellent.
I feel like that takes the pressure off of like, like deciding what you're gonna, this is my career or whatever.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up as a closing point, because I think that's the perennial myth of the career, is that at this point in life and where we are in the world, that you're going to have one career. And I don't think that's true anymore. Like, my dad had one career, sure, but I'm on my third career. I did 10 years in live theater as a stage manager and a backstage technician. I did 12 years as a journalist, and now I've been on campus for over a decade. And I've been working as a communications officer here, which is tangential to being a journalist, but it's a entirely different setup. So in 30 years, I've done 3 different things, and they all support each other and they all help each other out along the way. And I think that's a great way to think about life. It's like, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life, but what I do now may complement what I do down the road. So that's a great little takeaway. Well, great. I see we're just running out of time. I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. Trevor Rutherford, thanks for your time. Caitlin Gallupe and Caroline Riedel. I appreciate all of your time, and I hope people enjoyed this session, which we're going to post this as well. So if you know people who were not able to watch today, it'll be up on the Fine Arts YouTube page, probably by early next week. So it'll be available for sharing at that point. Thanks to everybody for being here, and thanks to our guests for watching. And have a good day, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.